Stand on the shores of eternity, stand in silence and listen to the rhythmic rhyming chimes of time. Close your eyes and see the mossed and whitened stones of infinity. Speak with lips of tranquility, of a love divine. Inhale the scent of history as you stand on the shores of eternity. And we're standing here this morning at Carrigacartecha, overlooking the magical and mystical lake of Lough Gur. This is an ancient land, inhabited by man for over 6,000 years. And man has left his mark on this place. Stone circles, ring forts, megalithic tombs, standing stones, castles, churches. But this is not just a place of history. This is also a land of myths and legends. Lough Gur is indeed a magical place, home of the fairies. But I prefer to use the Gaelic or the Irish word for the fairies, the Sheogi, the spirits of the mound or the hollow hill. And indeed, here on the northern shores, you will see Knockfinnell, and that is a hollow hill, the home of the fairies here in Lough Gur. Lough Gur is in the parish of Knockcaney, and again in the Irish, Knockanya, the hill of Anya. And Anya, of course, is queen of the fairies. Lough Gur is also home to Gorod Iarla, the human son of Anya, queen of the fairies. And we know him here in Lough Gur as the poet Earl, and he lives beneath the dark and broody waters of the lake. What terrible thing must he have done to force his mother to put such a curse on him? As you enter into the lake frontier, you will see a castle nestled in the trees at the foot of Knockadone. That castle is known as Boucher's Castle, but that's not the only castle here in Lough Gur. At the far side of Knockadone, there is another castle called the Black Castle, which now is in ruins. And that was the home of Maurice Fitzgerald, the first Earl of Desmond. And Maurice was in the habit of going for a walk along by the lakeshore every morning before his breakfast. Good for the constitution and what have you. And one morning, as Maurice was out for his walk, what do you think he saw? Only a beautiful lady bathing herself in the waters of the lake. And like any hot-blooded male, he stood to have a look at her, or as we'd say around here, to have a good gawk at her. And she put a magical spell on Maurice. Not that it took much of a spell, I can tell you. And they lay together on her magical cloak. And what do you think the same hussy did then? Only away home with her to her people, the fairies of Knockcaney. But of course, 9 months later, the result of this union was a beautiful bouncing baby boy. And although Anya loved him dearly, it's a well-known fact that a fairy queen cannot rear a human child. So back down to Lough Gur she came, banged on the door of the Black Castle, and when Maurice opened the door, she lobbed the baby into his hands and away home with her again to Knockcaney. And there was poor Maurice left holding the baby, so to speak. And sure, what could he do but get on with it and rear him away the best he could? And he christened him Gorod, and Gorod turned in to be a lovely little boy. But even though he was a human child, didn't he bring some of his mother's magical powers? And he would frighten the life out of the father with some of the tricks that he'd play on him. Now at this stage of the story, it comes with a health warning, not to try these at home. Well, wouldn't he jump in and out of a bottle, and it wasn't a very big bottle, I can tell you. And when the father would be sitting down at the table above the castle to have the dinner, and a big pig's head above in the middle of the table, and the steam rising up out of it, and the smell wafting all around the castle, and Morris drooling from both sides of the mouth with the thought of the taste of the pig's head. And just as he was about to stick the knife and fork into the pig's head, what do you think Garrod would do? Only make the pig wink at him. Now, wouldn't that fair put you off the dinner? But the thing that Garrod would do that would frighten the father the most was when he'd jump into the lake down here by Boland's Island, turn himself into a fish and swim along the top of the water. Garrod had many more magical tricks. But of course, as I said to you, this part of the story comes with a health warning. And like always, time moves on, and Garrod eventually became Earl of Desmond himself. And all the people were mad about him. For if you remember, I told you that we know him as the poet Earl here in Lough Gur. And wasn't he writing songs and stories and poems for all the people? Not like the politicians that are going nowadays. And the less said about that, the better. But didn't Garrod have a blackness in his soul? And he began to practice black magic. And as we all know, black magic is bad. And when his mother, Anya, Queen of the Fairies, heard this above in Knockcaney, she flew into a rage, and back down to Lough Gur she came. And Garrod had built himself a magnificent castle out here on the island in the middle of the lake. And that island is still known to this day as Garrod Island. And it was out there his mother went. And down into the dungeon she went. And if you think she was in a rage when she heard of him practicing the black magic, it was nothing to the fury she flew into when she actually saw him. And she banished Garrod, his castle, and all his knights to beneath the waters of the lake. And I can tell you this much, that put an end to the black magic. For we all know that you cannot practice black magic without boiling up the cauldron. And sure, how can you light a fire under a lake? And she gave Garrod one reprieve, and that is that he can come up out of the waters of the lake once every 7 years on his white horse, which is shod in silver shoes. And on that night that he arises from the lake, he can ride once around the perimeter. And when the silver shoes of his white steed are worn out, Garrod will come back in his human form and once again rule over the lands of Desmond. And that is the story of Garrod Iarla and how he came to be beneath the waters of the lake. But a word of warning before I leave you. If you take a notion on yourself to come and walk by the magical lake of Lough Gur at the midnight hour on a moonlit night, and if by some chance you happen upon a rider on a white horse, your fate is sealed, for Garrod shall take you to beneath the waters of the enchanted lake, and there you must remain in bondage until the curse on Garrod Iarla himself to dwell beneath the waters in his abode until the spell is broke. Correct me,